My boss fired me and told HR I stole from the company, so I'd never work again. A month later, he texted, "We need you back urgently." I showed up with an attorney and a copy of the audit. What happened next destroyed his career. So here's the thing about getting fired. Most people think the worst part is losing the job. Wrong. The worst part is when your boss lies to HR, tells them you're a thief, and makes sure you'll never work in your field again. Blacklists you across the entire industry. Makes it so recruiters go silent the moment they call your former employer for a reference. That's the part that makes you want to burn everything down. Name's Jake, 38 male. This happened 8 months ago, and I'm still processing how spectacularly my former boss destroyed his own career while trying to destroy mine. And trust me, by the end of this story, you'll understand why karma isn't just a concept, it's a financial audit trail. I worked at Riverside Manufacturing for 11 years. 11. That's longer than most marriages last these days. Started as a junior accountant fresh out of school. Worked my way up to financial operations manager by year 7. Managed a team of 6 people who actually knew what they were doing. Oversaw budgets totaling $47 million annually across 3 divisions. The company made industrial equipment, hydraulic systems, valve assemblies, precision components for the aerospace and medical device industries. The kind of stuff that goes into commercial aircraft and surgical robots. Serious business with serious margins. My boss was Greg Patterson, Chief Financial Officer. Guy was 52, had an MBA from Stanford that he managed to mention in approximately 60% of all conversations. Drove a pearl white Lexus ES 350 that he parked diagonally across 2 spots every single morning. Not because the spots were small, because he thought his car deserved extra protection. You know the type. Smart enough to be dangerous, insecure enough to be threatened by anyone remotely competent, and just political enough to climb the ladder without actually being good at the job. Greg had been CFO for 4 years when this story starts. Got promoted from a VP role at another company because our previous CFO retired and the board wanted someone with a fancy resume. First 6 months, he was fine. Kept his distance, let me run my department. Occasionally forwarded my reports to the CEO after making minor edits so it looked like he was involved. Classic middle management move. I didn't care. The work got done, the numbers were clean, and I had enough autonomy to actually do my job properly. We'd had friction for about 2 years before everything exploded. Nothing major at first. Small things. He'd change my budget proposals without consulting me, then present them in executive meetings like the revisions were his idea. Take credit for cost-saving measures my team implemented, like when we renegotiated our audit software contract and saved $43,000 annually. That went into his quarterly report as CFO initiatives. Forward my financial analysis reports to the CEO, with his name replacing mine in the executive summary. His assistant would literally edit the PDF header so it said, "Prepared by Greg Patterson," instead of my name. Standard office politics, right? The kind of petty territory marking that happens in every corporate environment. I kept my head down and did the work. Told myself it didn't matter as long as the company was successful and my team was respected. Looking back, I was naive. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Greg was showing me he was the kind of guy who'd steal credit without hesitation. I just didn't realize how far he'd take that tendency. The real problem started in January of last year. The CEO, James Henderson, founder and majority owner, announced we'd be implementing a new ERP system, enterprise resource planning for anyone who doesn't speak corporate. Basically a massive software overhaul that touches everything. Finances, inventory, production scheduling, vendor management, customer orders, shipping, quality control. Every system the company uses, all integrated into one platform. It's supposed to make things more efficient, give better data visibility, reduce errors. In reality, ERP implementations are where companies go to die. I've seen it happen. Mid-sized business decides they need to modernize, hires consultants, picks expensive software, and 18 months later they're hemorrhaging cash and the new system still doesn't work. Half the time, the company ends up reverting to their old systems and writing off millions. Greg was supposed to lead our implementation. Made sense on paper. CFO should oversee the financial systems transition. He talked a big game in the kickoff meeting. Brought in slides about digital transformation and operational excellence. Used words like synergy and optimization without actually explaining what any of it meant. He was drowning within 3 weeks. The man had no idea what he was doing. I sat in the project meetings watching him fumble through basic questions about data migration and system requirements. He'd picked a software vendor, IntegraSoft Solutions, primarily because they'd taken him to some industry conference in Las Vegas back in November. I know this because he mentioned it constantly. The Integrasoft team really impressed me in Vegas. Translation: they bought him steak dinners and promised him his implementation would be easy. He didn't properly scope the requirements. Didn't involve department heads in the selection process. Didn't account for our custom inventory tracking needs or the specialized reporting our aerospace clients required. Just signed a contract because the sales rep was friendly and showed him some polished demo videos. The vendor initially quoted $380,000 for the full project. Greg told the CEO and board it would cost $220,000 and be done in 4 months. Where'd he get those numbers? No idea. Maybe he thought he could negotiate them down mid-project. Maybe he genuinely believed he could cut corners and still deliver. Either way, he was catastrophically wrong. By March, 8 weeks into the implementation, we were already $190,000 over budget with maybe 40% actual completion. And that's being generous. The old system was already partially decommissioned because the implementation plan called for gradual cutover. So we were stuck in this nightmare middle state where half our data lived in the legacy system and half lived in Integrasoft, and nothing talked to each other properly. Production was reporting inventory discrepancies. We'd show 230 hydraulic valve assemblies in the new system, but physically we only had 186 in the warehouse. That's a $14,000 variance just sitting there unresolved. Multiply that across 400 plus SKUs, and you can imagine the chaos. Accounting couldn't close the books properly. Month-end close that normally took us 4 days was stretching to 2 weeks because we had to reconcile data across 2 systems manually. My team was working until 8-9 p.m. every night just trying to balance accounts that should have been automated. Customer orders were getting delayed because the sales team couldn't access accurate inventory data. We'd promise a shipment date based on what the system showed, then discover we didn't actually have the components available. Lost a $230,000 order to a medical device manufacturer because we couldn't fulfill their timeline. They went to a competitor. Everything was on fire. And Greg just kept scheduling meetings where he'd ask the Integrasoft team for status updates, nod along to their technical explanations he clearly didn't understand, and then tell us everything was on track. On track to what? Complete disaster? I spent 6 weeks working 16-hour days fixing Greg's mistakes. Not because I'm a martyr, but because I had 6 people on my team who were burning out, and letting the implementation fail would have meant layoffs. So I fixed it. My team pulled together all the documentation the vendor needed, requirement specifications, data mapping sheets, process flow diagrams, stuff that should have been done during planning, but Greg had skipped. I rewrote the implementation timeline, realistic milestones, proper dependencies, the kind of project plan you'd learn in any basic management course. Created workarounds so we could keep operating while transitioning systems. Built custom data bridges using our in-house IT team. Set up nightly reconciliation processes to catch discrepancies. Kevin, my senior financial analyst, worked weekends helping me build test scenarios. Linda stayed late every night validating data migrations. By mid-April, the system was functioning. Inventory accuracy hit 98.4%. Month-end close dropped back down to 5 days. We'd stabilized the disaster. Greg took credit for all of it. In the May executive meeting, he handed out copies of my work with his name on top. My implementation timeline, my process redesign, my workaround strategies, all printed with prepared by Gregory Patterson, Chief Financial Officer, in bold. I found out because Linda sent me a photo. Text message at 2:47 p.m. Thought you should see this. The board gave him a $40,000 performance bonus for successfully leading the ERP recovery. I should have quit right then. Should have walked into the CEO's office and explained everything. But I didn't. Told myself Greg's lies would eventually catch up with him. Wrong. That was a Friday. Monday morning, Greg called me into his office at 8:45 a.m. Close the door, he said when I walked in. He was standing by his window, hands in his pockets, doing that fake, casual pose executives do when they're about to ruin your day. Probably practiced it in the mirror. The posture was too deliberate, too staged. We need to talk about some discrepancies I found in your department's expense reports. My stomach dropped. Not like fear exactly, more like that gut feeling when you know someone's about to lie to your face and there's nothing you can do to stop it. What discrepancies? He turned around. His face was blank, neutral, rehearsed. This wasn't a conversation about actual problems. This was a performance. He'd already decided how this would go before I walked in. Over the past 8 months, There have been irregularities in vendor payments processed through your authorization code, duplicate invoices, payments to companies that don't appear to have legitimate business relationships with us, suspicious timing patterns. I've documented approximately $43,000 in questionable transactions. I just stared at him, brain trying to process what I was hearing. 8 months, $43,000, my authorization code. None of that made sense. Greg, that's not... I've already reported this to HR and the CEO. You're being placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. I need your badge, your laptop, and your company phone. Security will escort you out. The room tilted. Not like fainting. More like reality shifting sideways. Like the floor underneath me had turned into a carnival funhouse where nothing was quite level anymore. You're accusing me of theft. I'm reporting financial irregularities that occurred under your supervision. HR will handle the investigation. This is protocol. My hands started shaking. 11 years. I'd given this company 11 years. Missed my daughter's dance recitals because of month-end closings. Skipped family dinners because production schedules got delayed, and we needed emergency budget revisions. Put in weekends and holidays. Turned down job offers that would have paid more because I believed in what we were building here. And this guy, this fraud, who couldn't implement a basic software project without burning $250,000 and needed me to save his reputation, was calling me a thief. I want to see the documentation. I want to know exactly what transactions you're talking about. That's not how this works. HR will provide relevant information during their investigation. Greg, I process hundreds of vendor payments every month. If there are discrepancies, they're data entry errors or system glitches from the ERP migration. They're not badge, laptop, phone, now. His tone shifted. Cold. Final. He wasn't discussing this. Wasn't negotiating. He'd made his decision. Maybe days ago. Maybe weeks ago. This whole meeting was just him executing a plan he'd already set in motion. I handed over my badge, my laptop, my company phone. He put everything in a clear plastic bin, the kind you'd use for confiscated contraband, like I was being processed at a police station. Someone from HR will contact you within 48 hours. You should probably get a lawyer. That last part. That was the knife twist. Not necessary for the procedure. Not part of any standard HR protocol. He said it specifically to make sure I understood. He wasn't just firing me. He was making sure I knew he was destroying me. Security's waiting outside. I looked at the door. Through the frosted glass, I could see 2 shapes. Security had been standing right there the entire time. Greg had arranged this like a military operation, planned every detail, timed it for maximum efficiency. I walked to the door without another word, opened it. Tom and Steve from building security were standing there looking uncomfortable. I'd known these guys for years. Tom had worked security for 8 years. We'd talked about his daughter's college applications, his wife's battle with breast cancer. Steve was newer, only 2 years, but we'd chatted plenty. Football, weather, normal workplace small talk. Now they were here to escort me out like I'd stolen company equipment. Mr. Sullivan, Tom said quietly, professional, awkward. We need to walk you to your office so you can collect personal belongings. Then we'll escort you from the building. I know the drill. My office was 2 floors down. Same building, different world. I'd been in this space for 7 years. Same desk, same filing cabinets, same coffee mug collection lining the windowsill. Photos of Annie and the kids. That brass nameplate someone from my team had given me as a joke. Jake Sullivan, the guy who actually does math correctly. Tom handed me a cardboard box. I loaded it with a coffee mug, photos, and a brass nameplate. 7 years in one box. Through the glass walls, 47 employees on that floor suddenly found their screens fascinating. Nobody made eye contact except Frank, Carol, and Steven. The hallway went silent when we walked through. That's what fear does. The elevator ride felt endless. The lobby went quiet. Vincent from security said, "Take care, Mr. Sullivan." Outside, drizzling. I stood there holding my box. 11 years. Gone in 23 minutes. My phone rang. Bobby. Are you getting in or planning to stand there looking tragic? His pickup was at the curb. He'd brought bungee cords. Secured my box like furniture headed to Goodwill. We drove in silence. After 5 minutes. What are you going to do? Haven't decided yet. Complete lie. Bobby smirked. He'd known me since we were 15. Could tell when I was planning something. He drove me home, helped carry the box to the garage. You need anything? Call me. Bail money, getaway driver, tire slashing, I'm your guy. After he left, I went inside. Set the box on the kiddo and table. Just stared at it for probably 20 minutes. Then I opened the severance envelope Greg had included with my badge and laptop when security collected them. 6 months salary, $84,000 gross. Benefits continuation through December. Standard non-disparagement clause that basically said I couldn't badmouth the company publicly. Non-compete agreement that prevented me from working for direct competitors for 18 months. The NDA was tight. I couldn't discuss internal operations, client relationships, vendor contracts, or financial processes for 24 months. Everything was designed to silence me, make me go away quietly, accept my termination, take the money, disappear from the industry for a year and a half, and never tell anyone what really happened. But there was one exception buried in the fine print on page 4. One single sentence in subsection 3D that Greg's lawyers had either missed or underestimated. Departing executives retain shareholder communication rights per state corporate law, including participation in shareholder meetings and access to corporate records as provided by Oregon Revised Statutes 60.781. I read that sentence 15 times. Then I looked up ORS 60.781 on my laptop. Shareholders, even former employee shareholders, maintain certain rights to inspect corporate records, attend shareholder meetings, and receive financial disclosures. The law was designed to protect minority shareholders from being shut out by majority holders. And I'd bought into the employee stock purchase program 7 years ago. I owned 400 shares of Riverside Manufacturing. Not enough to influence anything. Barely 0.3% of outstanding shares. But legally, I was a shareholder. And shareholders have rights that regular employees don't. Victoria's lawyers had rushed the paperwork, probably drafted my severance in 3 hours to match Greg's aggressive timeline. That one sentence was going to cost them everything. I signed the severance agreement. They wanted me quiet? Sure, I'd be quiet for exactly 72 more hours. I called Brian Owen. He'd handled our real estate closing 2 years ago. He referred me to Mitchell Graves, an employment attorney who'd spent 15 years handling wrongful termination cases. Mitchell's office was downtown, 12th floor, windows overlooking the river. Guy was maybe 50, gray hair, looked like he'd seen every corporate betrayal humans could devise. I laid out everything. The ERP disaster, Greg taking credit for my work, the sudden accusation, the immediate termination. Mitchell took notes on a legal pad. Old school, didn't even touch his computer. Did you sign anything when you left? No, Greg just took my stuff and had security walk me out. Good, that's very good. He looked up. Did he give you any documentation about these supposed discrepancies? Nothing, just verbal accusations. Also good. How much access did you have to company financial systems? Complete access. I was financial operations manager. I authorized vendor payments, reviewed expense reports, managed budget allocations. So theoretically, you could have diverted funds if you wanted to. Theoretically, yes. But I didn't. I believe you. But here's what Patterson's going to argue. You had means, you had opportunity, and he's going to fabricate motive. He's going to tell HR you were upset about being passed over for his position or something similar. He'll create a narrative that makes sense on paper. My chest felt tight. So what do? Mitchell leaned back in his chair. We do 3 things. First, I file a cease and desist, demanding they stop making defamatory statements about you. Second, I request all documentation related to these alleged discrepancies through discovery. Third, and this is the important one, we conduct our own audit. An audit? You had complete access to financial systems. So did Patterson. If there are fraudulent transactions, we need to determine who actually initiated them. My gut says Patterson's projecting, accusing you of exactly what he's been doing himself. That thought hadn't even occurred to me, but it made sense. Greg had been acting paranoid for months, defensive during budget reviews, vague about certain vendor relationships. How long would an audit take? With the right forensic accountant? 3 to 4 weeks if we move fast. I know someone who specializes in this. Former FBI, worked corporate fraud cases for 20 years. He's expensive, but he's thorough. How expensive? $20,000, maybe $25,000 for a full analysis. I didn't have that kind of money just sitting around, but I also didn't have a choice. This wasn't about the job anymore. This was about my reputation, my career, my ability to ever work in finance again. Do it. Mitchell made a call. Got me a meeting with the forensic accountant for that afternoon. Robert Owen, no relation to my realtor, operated out of a small office that looked more like a therapist's waiting room than an investigation headquarters. But the credentials on his wall told the real story. FBI commendations, certifications in fraud examination, letters of appreciation from 3 different U.S. attorneys. Mitchell explained the situation, Robert said. This pattern is more common than you'd think. Executive gets caught in financial mismanagement, panics, throws a subordinate under the bus to buy time. How would we prove Patterson's behind this? We trace every transaction he's accusing you of and determine the actual authorization chain. Modern financial systems log everything: who initiated payments, who approved them, timestamps, IP addresses, device identifiers. It's extremely difficult to fake that data convincingly. What do you need from me? Everything. Old emails, text messages, any documentation you kept, system access logs if you have them, names of people on your team who might be willing to talk. I'll also need Mitchell to subpoena the company's financial records, which they'll fight, but will win eventually. I spent 4 hours in Robert's office downloading every work email I'd ever sent from my personal computer. Turns out I was paranoid about losing data, so I'd been backing up my work files to a personal cloud drive every month. 11 years of financial records, vendor contracts, budget proposals, correspondence. Robert's eyes lit up when I showed him. This is gold. Most people don't keep this kind of documentation. I'm thorough. No, you're smart. This is going to save us months. I left Robert's office feeling something I hadn't felt since Monday morning. Not hope exactly. More like controlled anger. The kind that makes you focused instead of desperate. HR called 2 days later. Woman named Patricia Owen. Still no relation. She sounded nervous. Mr. Sullivan, we need to schedule a meeting to discuss the allegations against you. We can do this at our office or via video conference. I'm represented by counsel. All communication needs to go through my attorney, Mitchell Graves. Silence. Then, I see. Can you provide his contact information? I gave her Mitchell's number and hung up. Felt good. Really good. Mitchell called me an hour later. HR reached out. They want to meet next week. I told them we'd agree to a meeting only if they provide full documentation of the alleged discrepancies in advance. Will they do that? They have to. If they're claiming you committed fraud, they need to prove it. If they can't provide documentation, their case collapses. The documentation arrived 5 days later. Mitchell forwarded it to me with a note. This is weaker than I expected. Might be good news. I opened the file. 17 pages. Printouts of vendor payments with my authorization signature. Cover memo from Greg outlining suspicious patterns. I read through it twice. Then I called Mitchell. This is edited. What do you mean? These payment records. The dates are right, the amounts are right, but they've removed contextual information. Invoice numbers, purchase order references, approval chains. It looks like I just authorized random payments. But if you saw the full records, you'd see these were all legitimate, properly documented transactions. Can you prove that? With my backup files? Absolutely. Every one of these payments has a corresponding invoice, purchase order, and budget approval. I can show the complete paper trail. Mitchell was quiet for a moment. Send me everything. I'm going to have Robert analyze this alongside what the company provided. If Patterson's manipulating records, we're going to bury him. I spent the weekend matching every transaction in Greg's accusation to my archived records. All 17 flagged payments had complete documentation, legitimate vendors, proper invoices, appropriate budget allocations. Nothing irregular. One payment jumped out, though. $8,400 to Summit Consulting Services dated February 12th. I remembered this one specifically because I'd questioned it. Greg had sent me an invoice and told me to process it immediately. Said it was for ERP implementation consulting. I'd asked for a purchase order. He said he'd email it. Never did. But he followed up 3 times, insisting the payment needed to go through that day for contractual reasons. I'd processed it because he was my boss, and I assumed he'd handled the paperwork. Dumb in retrospect. I pulled up the invoice from my files. Looked generic. Basic Word document formatting. No company logo. Address listed was a UPS store. I showed Annie. This looks fake. Can Robert trace where the money went? Maybe, if we can subpoena the company's banking records. I sent everything to Robert. He called me back at 8 p.m. on Sunday. You need to see this. Can you come to my office? I drove over. Robert had papers spread across his entire desk. Financial records, transaction logs, spreadsheets with highlighted rows. Patterson's been running a vendor fraud scheme for at least 3 years, Robert said. I found 14 payments to shell companies, fake businesses with UPS store addresses, no websites, no business licenses. Total of $127,000, all processed through accounts he controlled. How did you find this? Your backup files. You documented everything, including invoices and purchase orders. I cross-referenced those against the company's official vendor list. These 14 companies don't appear anywhere in procurement records, contract files, or tax documents. They don't exist. But Greg had me process one of those payments. Right. That's probably when he realized you might notice the pattern. So he fired you and blamed the whole thing on you. Classic misdirection. My hands were shaking again. But this time it was rage, not fear. Can we prove Patterson created these vendors? I'm working on it. I've traced some of the payments to bank accounts. If we can get Mitchell to subpoena Patterson's financial records, we'll probably find deposits corresponding to these payments. But even without that, what we have now is enough to demonstrate the accusations against you are fraudulent. We met with Mitchell the next morning. He reviewed Robert's findings for an hour, making notes, asking questions. Finally, he looked up. This is a prosecutor's dream. Patterson's going to prison. Prison? Wire fraud, embezzlement, falsifying business records, making false statements to federal investigators if this touches any federal contracts, which it probably does since you make aerospace components. We're talking federal charges. What about my case? Your wrongful termination case just became leverage. We go to the company and present this evidence. We tell them they can either reinstate you with full back pay, clear your name completely, and cooperate with our criminal referral against Patterson, or we file a lawsuit that exposes their entire executive team as either complicit or criminally negligent. They'll fight. Initially, yes, but once they see what we have, they'll fold. No company wants this in court. The discovery process alone would destroy them. Every vendor payment for the last 5 years would become public record. How long? 2 weeks, maybe 3. I'll draft a demand letter with Robert's findings attached. Send it directly to the CEO and the company's general counsel. Copy the board of directors for good measure. I felt something shift in my chest. Not satisfaction yet. More like watching the first domino fall. Mitchell sent the letter on a Wednesday. 37 pages. Executive summary of Robert's findings. Timeline of Patterson's fraud scheme. My documentation proving every accusation against me was false. Demand for immediate reinstatement. Full back pay. Public retraction of all accusations and cooperation with criminal investigation. The CEO called Mitchell directly 2 days later. They talked for 45 minutes. When Mitchell hung up, he was smiling. They want to meet. Monday, CEO, general counsel, and the board chair. What about Patterson? Suspended pending investigation. They're bringing in an outside law firm to audit everything. Do I need to be there? Only if you want to watch them apologize. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. The meeting was at 9 a.m. Monday. Mitchell's office. The CEO showed up with their general counsel and 2 other attorneys I'd never seen before. They looked exhausted, probably spent the weekend reviewing everything. The CEO was James Henderson, 61, founded the company in 1997, built it from 12 employees to 340. I'd always liked him. Direct, fair, actually cared about the business. He looked sick. Jake, he extended his hand. I shook it. I owe you an enormous apology. What Patterson did, what we allowed to happen, there's no excuse. The general counsel, Patricia Collins, set a folder on the table. We've reviewed Mr. Owen's findings. We've also conducted our own preliminary audit. The evidence is conclusive. Mr. Patterson has been embezzling company funds for approximately 3 years. Total estimated theft is between $127,000 and $160,000. He fabricated accusations against you to cover his tracks. We've terminated his employment effective immediately, James added. We're cooperating fully with law enforcement. We've also prepared this agreement. Patricia slid papers across the table. I didn't touch them. What am I looking at? Mitchell picked them up, scanned through. Full reinstatement to your previous position. Back pay for all missed time. 3 years additional salary as damages. That's approximately $290,000. Complete retraction sent to all employees, vendors, and industry contacts. Written letter of recommendation. Agreement not to sue for wrongful termination or defamation. That's their offer? I looked at James. It's what's fair given the circumstances. Fair. I leaned back. James, your CFO accused me of being a thief. Had me escorted out by security. Told HR I'd stolen from the company. You know what that did? I couldn't apply for jobs. Couldn't use my experience as a reference. Spent 6 weeks thinking my career was over. My daughter asked me why I was home all the time. My wife had to watch me fall apart. James looked down. We failed you, Patricia said quietly. We should have investigated Patterson's claims more thoroughly before taking action. We should have given you due process. We didn't. That's on us. 300 grand doesn't fix my reputation. No, James agreed. But it's a start, and we're prepared to do more. We'll pay for your legal fees. All of them. We'll provide testimony if Patterson's case goes to trial. We'll make public statements clarifying your innocence if you want that. I looked at Mitchell. He shrugged slightly. Your call. I thought about Greg, driving his Lexus, taking credit for my work, smirking while I got escorted out. I want my job back, not my old position. His, CFO. Patricia and James exchange glances. Jake, the board hasn't. Patterson's position is open. I know this company's finances better than anyone. I've been here 11 years. I just saved you from a fraud scheme. You owe me this. James was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Agreed, but you'll need board approval. I can't guarantee. Then schedule a board meeting. I'll present my case. This week? This week, they agreed. Board meeting Thursday. I had 3 days to prepare the presentation of my life. Mitchell drove me home. We didn't talk much. When he pulled into my driveway, he said, "You know, most people would take the money and walk away. I'm not most people." No, you're really not. I spent 3 days building a presentation. Not about revenge, about competence. I outlined the ERP implementation disaster and how my team had saved it. Detailed cost savings I'd implemented over 11 years. $3.4 million total. Showed vendor relationships I'd optimized. Presented a financial strategy for the next 3 years that would increase margins by 7%. Thursday came, boardroom, 6th floor. 8 board members, James, Patricia, me, and Mitchell. I presented for 45 minutes. Didn't mention Greg once. Just showed them what I'd accomplished and what I could do. When I finished, the board chair, woman named Margaret Phillips, retired aerospace executive, leaned forward. Mr. Sullivan, what Patterson did to you was unconscionable. What we allowed to happen was unacceptable. If we appoint you CFO, what's your first priority? Complete financial audit. Not just Patterson's fraud, but every process, every control, every system. We're never going to let something like this happen again. She smiled. When can you start? Monday. They voted unanimously. I was the new CFO. I didn't celebrate. Went home, told Annie, then sat on the couch for an hour just processing everything. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Jake, it's Greg. We need to talk. This is all a misunderstanding. I can explain everything. Can we meet? I stared at that message for probably 10 minutes. Then I screenshotted it, forwarded it to Mitchell and Robert, and blocked the number. My first day as CFO was surreal. Same building, same people, different office, Greg's former office. I'd had maintenance remove everything. His desk, his chair, his pretentious art, brought in my own furniture. Linda from finance knocked on my door around 10 a.m. Can I just say, this is the best thing that's happened to this company in years. My old team threw together a lunch. Nothing fancy, just sandwiches in the conference room. But Kevin stood up and said, "Boss, you taught us to document everything. That advice literally saved your career. We're glad you're back." That almost broke me. Almost. Patterson's case took 7 months to go to trial. Federal prosecutors charged him with wire fraud, embezzlement, and making false statements. Robert testified about the forensic audit. I testified about the fraudulent vendor payments. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing was another 3 months. Judge gave him 6 years federal prison. Ordered $127,000 restitution to Riverside Manufacturing. Banned him from serving as a corporate officer for life. I didn't attend the sentencing. Didn't need to. I'd already won. 6 years federal prison. $127,000 restitution. Lifetime ban from serving as a corporate officer. The judge called it a profound betrayal of fiduciary duty and a calculated attempt to destroy an innocent man's career to cover criminal activity. I was in my office when Mitchell texted me the verdict. Forwarded it to Annie with one word. Done. She replied with a champagne bottle emoji. We went out to dinner that night. Nothing fancy. Just the 4 of us at the Italian place near our house. My daughter asked why we were celebrating on a random Tuesday. Dad won something at work, Annie said. Like a trophy? Something like that. I've been CFO for 8 months now. Implemented new financial controls that would have caught Greg's scheme in the first month. Every vendor payment over $5,000 requires dual authorization now. We brought in an external audit firm that reviews our books quarterly instead of annually. Created a whistleblower hotline that reports directly to the board, not through executive management. The ERP system actually works now. Month-end close takes 3 days instead of 5. Inventory accuracy is at 99.1%. We landed a $4.8 million contract with a medical robotics company in California because our systems could demonstrate real-time inventory tracking and quality control documentation. Linda got promoted to Director of Financial Operations. Kevin's running the accounting team. My old department is thriving. 3 months after Greg got sentenced, his lawyer reached out to Mitchell. Greg wanted to meet with me, said he had information about other financial irregularities at Riverside, claimed he could help us recover additional funds if I'd agree to speak with prosecutors about reducing his sentence. Mitchell called me. What do you want me to tell them? Tell them Jake Sullivan doesn't take meetings with convicted felons. That's cold. He earned it. Greg tried again 2 weeks later. Different approach. Sent a handwritten letter to my house. Don't know how he got my address. Probably still had company records from before his arrest. The letter was 6 pages. Apologies. Explanations about financial pressure and bad decisions. Claims that he'd actually been protecting me from board members who wanted to eliminate my position. Said firing me was supposed to be temporary until he could fix things internally. Complete garbage from start to finish. I read it once. Then I photographed every page and sent it to Mitchell and Robert. Does this change anything legally? I asked. No, but it's evidence of continued harassment. Want me to file a restraining order? Not yet. Let's see if he gives up. He didn't. Week later, his wife, ex-wife by then, showed up at Riverside. Veronica at reception called me. There's a Karen Patterson here asking to see you. She says it's personal. Send her up. Greg's ex-wife looked rough. Hadn't seen her since a company holiday party 3 years ago. Back then, she'd been polished, expensive jewelry, that Upper West Side confidence. Now she looked tired, worn out. She sat across from my desk, Greg's old desk, and didn't waste time. He's been calling me. Wants me to ask you to write a letter to the parole board. Character reference or something? And you're here because? Because I'm not doing it. And I wanted you to know he's going to keep trying. He's convinced you're the key to getting his sentence reduced. I'm not writing him anything. Good. He destroyed my life too. Our son won't talk to either of us. My parents are mortified. I had to sell our house because the legal fees drained everything. She stood up. Just wanted to warn you. He's going to escalate. She left. I watched her walk to the elevator through my office window. 2 weeks after that, I got a LinkedIn message from someone named Jessica Hartman. Profile said she worked in financial compliance consulting. Message said she was working on a case study about corporate fraud prevention and wanted to interview me about best practices. Seemed legitimate until I noticed her profile had been created 3 days earlier. 0 connections. No work history details. Generic profile photo that reverse image search traced back to a stock photography site. I forwarded it to Mitchell. This Greg? Probably. Block and ignore. Greg kept trying different angles. Sent emails through what appeared to be sympathetic former colleagues. Had someone call my office claiming to be from a legal advocacy nonprofit researching wrongful imprisonment. Even tried to friend request Annie on Facebook using a fake profile. Every attempt got documented and sent to Mitchell. Month 6 of Greg's sentence, something changed. The attempts stopped. Complete silence for 3 weeks. Then I got a call from Robert Owen, the forensic accountant. Thought you should know. Federal prosecutors are investigating additional charges against Patterson. Turns out Riverside wasn't his only victim. What do you mean? He was CFO at 2 other companies before Riverside. Both had unexplained financial irregularities during his tenure. FBI's pulling records now. Could add another 3 to 5 years to his sentence. Huh. Yeah. Guy's a serial fraudster. You weren't his first rodeo, just the first one where someone fought back hard enough to expose the whole operation. That explained the sudden silence. Greg had bigger problems than convincing me to help him. Last month, Mitchell forwarded me an email. Greg's lawyer was requesting documents related to my initial termination. Apparently, Greg was trying to sue Riverside for wrongful termination, claiming the company had violated his due process rights when they fired him. Can he do that? I asked. He can file the lawsuit. He'll lose. He was fired for embezzlement that he was later convicted of in federal court. But desperate people do desperate things. What do you need from me? Nothing. Their lawyer already contacted me asking if you'd be willing to testify. I said you'd comply with any subpoena, but wouldn't volunteer. Sound good? Perfect. I haven't heard anything since. Greg's lawsuit will probably get dismissed in preliminary hearings. But the fact that he's burning his remaining money on legal fees, trying to go after the company he stole from? That's poetry. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.